Good evening and welcome to Sideline Sportscast with your hosts Gary O'Keefe and Kevin Bolger. We're here looking at the All-Ireland quarter-finals on Sunday. Kildare take on Cork in the first game, followed by Donegal versus Kerry. So first we'll take a look at the Kildare-Cork game. That's the first fixture of the day. Gary, how do you think this one's going to go?
This is going to be a very interesting fixture because, of course, Cork are after a very long layover. They haven't played a match in the last 4 weeks, and even then that match was against Clare and they demolished Clare, so they haven't really played a competitive championship match in a long time. The last competitive match they played was against Kerry and they beat them by 5 points. Whereas Kildare, on the other hand, they've been getting a bit of momentum going through the back door. They recently played Limerick and that match went into extra time and they pushed on from there to win by 7 points. And then against Sligo they annihilated them and blew them out of the water. I suppose it's hard to tell where both of these teams are relative to each other. Cork really haven't been tested, so it'll be interesting to find out if their lack of match practice tells in this quarter-final fixture. What do you think about that, Kevin?
Yeah, it's an interesting one to look at. Cork haven't played in quite some time. They could suffer from the layoff that they've been exposed to now since winning the Munster final. Okay, so the most recent match was against Clare a month ago, but they played pretty well in that game. They won by 12 points. And then you can guarantee they haven't been doing nothing since then. They've probably been training hard, drilling hard, and they're going to come in a lot fresher than the other teams into the quarterfinals. Kildare, on the other hand, as you said, have been able to gather up a bit more momentum coming into this game. And their half forward, Johnny Doyle, is saying that they won't be worrying about Cork coming into this game, that they're just going to concentrate in their own game. I think Kildare have been playing pretty well up and loud, and it's going to be interesting to see whether it's going to be the momentum of Kildare is going to take over or the sheer class of Cork.
Yeah, you can guarantee Cork haven't been doing nothing in training, but at the same time, you can't achieve the same levels of intensity in training sessions as in a full-fledged match. So I think that will negatively impact Cork, which is a shame, of course, because they've won all their matches to date and they shouldn't really be punished for doing that. Kildare, on the other hand, they show great fitness coming through the Limerick game in extra time. So while they have played matches in 3 consecutive weeks or 4 consecutive weeks now, you wouldn't think that will have too much of a negative impact on them since they have already displayed great fitness.
Yeah, and that's the disappointing thing for Cork is having the long layover, and I think a lot of teams suffer from that. That's a lot to do with the structure of the GAA Championship. In hurling, you have the same thing where if you win the provincial championships in either Leinster or Munster, you get an automatic bye into the semi-finals. Other teams come in with a lot more match practice. That can always be a downside when you're going into a championship match if you haven't played in a while. Kildare, like you said, are going to be very fit as well, and that's what I'm looking at really. If Kildare are going to come out on top, they're going to take it from their match fitness and the fact that they've been playing games and winning games and doing it well. Whereas Cork, yeah, I agree completely. Just training games, just they don't emulate what goes on the real pitch.
While Kildare will be well drilled, they don't really have the players to stand up to the likes of Paul Kerrigan, Aidan Walsh, Nicholas Murphy, Fintan Gould, Daniel Goulding, Owen Cadigan. Like the list goes on and on. Cork probably have the most talent at their disposal out of any team.
And they've also won the All Ireland recently. Like they're always contenders for the All Ireland. Whereas you wouldn't say the same of Kildare. You'd be happy to see Kildare in the running for the Leinster Championship most years.
I don't know if Kildare would agree with you there. An interesting fact about Cork, the year that they won the All Ireland final, they actually had a run in with Limerick in the qualifiers where they actually beat Limerick after extra time, and Kildare have done the exact same this year. So you'd wonder, is history about to repeat itself, and are Kildare about to win the All Ireland final this year?
So you're being a bit nostalgic then. You think that Kildare are going to do the same as Cork did a few years ago?
If I'm honest, no. I think Cork will have too much class for this. It would be a shame if they lost, given the fact that they have effectively been screwed by the way that the tournament is laid out. It's a case of you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't in terms of winning the provincial final. While you want to avoid the 6-day turnaround, you still want to avoid a 3 or 4 week layoff that Cork have faced. But I think Cork will have too much class for Kildare to cope with, and I think Cork are going to win this one.
Okay, so you think Cork's going to win this, and I think I'm going to agree with you on this one. I think Cork just have too much class in comparison to Kildare. As you said, the list goes on with the names you can throw out. Daniel Goulding is probably the standout player. Kildare don't Kildare don't seem to have the standout player. They seem to be a very well-rounded unit instead, which is very good. And you'd like to see them win for a bit of romance in the championship, but I think Cork are going to pull through this one.
Yeah, Kildare have the likes of, say, John Doyle and Emmett Bolton, and Thomas O'Connor had a great game as well in the last match, but I can't see them stepping up to the plate. I think this is their championship has run its course at this stage, which would be a shame for them because they've put in so much work this year. Of course, you have Shawnee Johnston as well. He's yet to really prove himself in the Kildare shirt, but I'd say we'll leave that issue. We won't
Sure,
go on.
we won't
We
go into
won't.
Shawnee Johnston just yet because that's a completely different issue altogether.
In the next game is going to be Donegal against Kerry. Donegal are coming into this with a great win after beating down by I think it was 11 points. Kerry on the other hand have gotten two good games under their belts where they beat Tyrone and they beat Clare. They seem to have a bit of momentum and the old players that they usually depend on seem to be all playing well. Both of the O'Sheas, Brian Sheehan, Donaghy, Gooch, Galvin, they all seem to be firing on all cylinders at the moment, which is good. Galvin actually got sent off in the last game, but because it was after two yellows and not a straight red, he's still able to play in this match. Donegal, on the other hand, Jim McGuinness is a genius, and what he's done with the talent pool that he has is nothing short of remarkable. They have a few standout players, but they work really good as a team, and I think this one is going to be one of the games of the championship.
Yeah, and I certainly think that this particular game could have the potential winner of the All Ireland. I know it's a bit far fetched to think that maybe Donegal will go all the way. They do have a very hard route towards the final, but I think it's definitely possible if they can beat Kerry, they can beat anyone. And as you said, they kind of swept everyone before them in Ulster. You know, they went right through to the final and beat them very well to become back-to-back Ulster champions. And what they're saying is that their goal for the year was to reclaim that Ulster Championship. It's very good to hear that the way Donegal are talking. They're talking about building for the future. They're talking about a process that they're implementing. So, you know, they're starting last year was their goal was to get to the Ulster final. This year was their goal was to retain the Ulster title, and they're hoping to build that up gradually over time. Well, that's according to Jim McGuinness anyway. So now they come up against Kerry, who they're calling it the draw from hell, but it could be quite the opposite as well. And Jim McGuinness was just saying that, you know, it could nearly be worse to get a smaller opponent because when they are the underdogs, they're going to rise to the occasion a bit more. Kerry, on the other hand, like you said, they're on the back of two great games. They had a very poor start to the year. You know, they didn't get very far in Munster. They've recovered well. They got a good win against Tyrone and another good win against Clare, and this could be the third. Colin Cooper, he's now the top scorer of all time in Kerry after his one goal and 4 points last weekend.
Yeah, it's amazing. Kerry are breaking all the records at the moment. In the last few weeks, they've had Colm Cooper the top scorer, and then Tomás O'Shea has taken over from his brother Dara O'Shea as having the all-time leading championship appearances. The interesting thing about these teams is they both played Tyrone, and how they overcame Tyrone has been very different. Donegal barely scraped past Tyrone in what I would refer to as one of the most intense games of the year, possibly the most intense game of the championship so far. Kerry on the other side blew Tyrone out of the water, and that has somewhat been the catalyst of their revival this year.
Yeah, I agree with you there. It has been a bit of a catalyst. They beat Tyrone pretty well, and they went on then to beat Clare even more. But I was just looking at what some of the stuff that the Donegal people were saying and the pundits were saying, and that they're not going to be too worried about Kerry. What they're trying to think of is they're kind of trying to focus on themselves and their own game. And what they're hoping is then that because the game against Tyrone was such a huge game for Kerry, that they've set the peak for their performance this year. The only way is down.
I think that's a load of balderdash to put it politely. Um, Kerry know when to peak. We talked about how in the last podcast that Croke Park was Dublin's adoptive home. I would certainly say that it's Kerry's adoptive home too because they seem to perform best in Croke Park. one would say that we haven't seen the best of Kerry yet. Although they mightn't have the emotional motivation for the Tyrone game, you saw Galvin at the end being interviewed in tears. I still think that they'll be well up for this game, and they'll really want to build on their performances to date.
And the Croke Park factor is another thing they've been talking about in the build up to this game. How this isn't the kind of ground that suits Donegal. They want a smaller ground. And it's true, Croke Park, there are other stadiums out there with similar sized pitches or even the same size pitch or even bigger. But there's something about Croke Park that it just seems to open up around you and just becomes bigger because of the setting.
I don't know. I think defensively last year Croke Park mightn't have suited Donegal. Well, they didn't do too badly in Croke Park last year, but I think this year with the new attacking mentality that they've brought to the game, where everybody attacks and everybody's an attacker, I think Croke Park will suit them just fine. One thing now that you'd see similarities between Kerry and Donegal is their style of play. Mark O'Shea and his brother Tomas have been attacking defenders for Kerry for donkey's years. Now you see Donegal using their defenders as their attackers. I think in the last game, something like 11 players scored from play for Donegal, which is an outstanding statistic. So I think the wideness and the openness of Croke Park will suit them down to the ground now this year.
And it's great to see Donegal attacking because they came across some criticism last year for their defensive approach to the game and how it was ruining the game. They were involved in the lowest scoring game at one stage in 50 years with only 14 points.
Well, they might have been defensive last year, but they're anything but this year. You saw them put 218 on the scoreboard against Down, and if a hurling team put that on the board, they'd be very happy. Yeah, I really like Donegal's work ethic. The likes of Michael Murphy and Colin McFadden, while the two of them, if they were playing for a different team, they might just be the target men in the edge of the box, waiting for the ball to get to them. But you'll see in this game, you'll see both of them tracking back into the midfield line and the half back line, and even the full back line at various stages of the game, just trying to win possession and trying to stop Kerry from playing and scoring. It'll be interesting to see if Kerry will be able to open up the Donegal defence and vice versa, because you saw the level of intensity Kerry are bringing to the fold this year, or since the Tyrone match. Granted, they didn't play too well against Westmeath, but they've only shifted 1-6 in both of their last two games. So Kerry are defensively a very strong outfit too.
So we'll wrap it up here for today, and I just want to ask you, who do you think is going to win this game?
As I said before, this game could really go either way. Kerry probably have the better and the more outstanding individual players and playmakers, but Donegal, from what I can see, have a better work ethic. I'm going to say Donegal are going to win this one, but to be honest, it could go either way. What about yourself?
Yeah, I'm looking at the game and I'm thinking the same. I'm thinking it could go either way. Kerry are on form at the moment, and as well as being on form, they're full of stars. The Gooch Cooper is on. He's going to be delighted with himself becoming the top scorer. You have Paul Galvin is back, as you said. He got 2 yellow cards, but he will be playing the game because it was just 2 yellow cards.
Donaghy actually seems to be getting back to the form of what we've seen in seasons past of him too.
Yeah, because he's been a kind of a shadow of himself the last couple of seasons, been a bit disappointing. But Donegal, on the other hand, are a very well-rounded team. Their manager, Jim McGuinness, he's drilled them very well. He's got tactics going, very tactical game going, and he has a process in mind. No doubt he'll be disappointed if they lose on Sunday, but at the same time, I'm sure he can be happy with how far they got.
I don't know about that now. I think he'll be very disappointed. The comments you're referring to earlier on, I think he was just trying to play down the hype, so he didn't build up his players too much and set them up for defeat. I'd say he's one of the most competitive managers out there, and he'll be sickened if they lose.
If I was to choose one team to win, I think I'm gonna have to side with you in this one again. I think Donegal. I'm dreaming that Donegal win this because it really adds something to the championship. I think if they do, and even though Kerry are on form, I just think that this could be Donegal's year to go a bit further.
Okay, so to summarise this all now, in the Kildare Cork match, we both say Cork, and in the first ever meeting of Donegal and Kerry in the championship, we both side with Donegal.
That's all from us from this weekend's action in the All-Ireland Senior Football Championship. Tune us into us next time when we can talk more sports. Thanks for listening.
And of course, if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. The link will be in the video right now.